He had worked in the company for over 5 years, quietly moving through the wide halls of the tech headquarters every day. Most people barely noticed him. To the engineers rushing to meetings, the designers buried in their screens, and the executives walking briskly with coffee cups in hand, he was just the janitor, the man who kept the floors clean and the trash emptied. But he knew the company in a way few others did. He had seen it grow from a small startup into a global tech powerhouse. He had watched teams struggle with deadlines, seen stress etched on faces, and witnessed tiny mistakes that no one seemed to care about until they became big problems. He arrived at work early, before the first cars pulled into the parking lot. The building was quiet, filled only with the hum of the lights and the occasional beep of a security system. He moved with purpose, not because anyone told him to, but because he had a habit of paying attention. His eyes scanned the floors. His hands moved automatically to pick up discarded papers, to wipe smudges from glass, to organize cords that were tangled near important equipment. It was routine for him, but he treated it like an invisible checklist of safety and order. He knew the slightest problem in a high-tech company could turn into disaster if ignored. This particular morning, the office buzzed with a nervous energy that he could feel even without being part of the meetings or the emails. The company was preparing for the launch of a new AI system that was expected to change the industry entirely. Everyone was on edge. Engineers spoke in rapid-fire technical terms, checking and rechecking their codes. Designers ran simulations over and over. Executives argued over marketing strategies and press releases. But in the corners of the building, unnoticed, small problems were hiding. A cord frayed near a server, a spill of water left by a forgetful employee, an unlocked door that led to a room with critical systems. These were things that could ruin everything. He paused in front of a row of servers, noticing the faint smell of overheating. No one else had said anything, probably too busy to see it. He touched the cords carefully, following them along the floor to ensure none were pinched or loose. One of them had a small fray that could spark if left unchecked. He didn't call attention to it immediately. He made a mental note to fix it after his rounds. Later, he would alert the engineers not to make himself look important, but because it was the right thing to do. As he moved through the office, he overheard snippets of conversations. "We're almost ready for the launch," one engineer said, his voice tense. "Any delay now could cost millions." Another replied, "I've double-checked everything. I think we're safe." They didn't see him standing near the doorway, listening, noticing, and silently evaluating. In his years at the company, he had learned to understand technology in small, practical ways. He didn't have a fancy degree or a title, but he had a curiosity that drove him to learn. He read manuals left behind in meeting rooms. He watched tutorials on his old phone during lunch breaks, and he tested small circuits in his spare time. People might call him just the janitor, but in his mind, he was more than that. By mid-morning, the building was alive with tension. The AI launch was less than 24 hours away. Teams were working in multiple rooms, and the noise of keyboards, phones, and murmured discussions filled the air. He pushed his cart quietly, avoiding stepping on wires or bumping into someone busy with their tasks. As he moved, he noticed another small problem: a cup of coffee teetering dangerously on the edge of a server console. If it spilled, it could fry the circuits and set the launch back by hours, maybe even days. Without thinking, he reached out and steadied the cup, placing it safely on the side table. The engineer nearby never even looked up. He smiled faintly to himself. No one noticed, no one thanked him, but he didn't do it for praise. He did it because he cared. He had a sense of responsibility that went beyond cleaning floors or emptying trash. The company trusted him to keep things running smoothly in ways people didn't see. In a sense, he was part of the invisible backbone of the company, quietly holding it together while everyone else chased big ideas and deadlines. Lunchtime came, but he didn't eat right away. Instead, he used the break to check on other areas that were less obvious but equally important. In the break room, he noticed crumbs near an electrical outlet that could cause overheating. In the stairwell, he saw a puddle from a leaking pipe that could lead to someone slipping. In the main hallway, a small cable was stretched across the floor like a trap. He fixed each problem quietly, methodically, without interrupting anyone's work. Every tiny action added up to safety and stability for the company, though no one around him realized it. What made him different from other janitors he had worked with in the past was that he never treated his work as just cleaning. Every surface, Every corner, every piece of equipment was part of a bigger system in his mind. He understood that in a high-stakes environment, small mistakes could have huge consequences. He remembered one incident years ago when a minor spill in the server room caused a short circuit, delaying a product launch. Since then, he had been more vigilant than ever, training himself to spot hazards that others overlooked. His attention to detail often went unnoticed, but today, something felt different. There was a tension in the air that made him aware that more than just daily operations were at stake. He could see the exhaustion on people's faces. The CEO walked past him, barely nodding, muttering instructions to assistants. Engineers were muttering to themselves, frustrated at minor coding errors. The launch was supposed to be perfect, flawless, the kind of event that would cement the company's reputation in the industry. And he knew silently that the smallest misstep could ruin it all. He rounded a corner and noticed a small fire extinguisher that had been knocked off its mount. It lay near a server rack, a detail most people would ignore. He picked it up, straightened it, and checked that the pressure gauge was full. A minor action perhaps, but in his mind it could prevent disaster. He moved on, feeling the weight of responsibility even though no one had asked him to take it on. In the afternoon, a sudden alarm went off in one of the labs. Engineers rushed in, worried it was a major system failure. He pushed his cart closer, curious but careful. When he got there, he saw it was only a small leak in a cooling pipe that had triggered the sensor. A minor issue, easily fixed, but if ignored, it could have caused overheating during the launch. He quietly closed the valve and called the maintenance system to log the fix. The engineers thanked him briefly, almost dismissively, before rushing back to their work. He smiled again, not expecting more than that. By the end of the day, the building was buzzing with preparation for the final tests before the launch. Teams worked late into the evening, checking codes, running simulations, and preparing presentations. He continued his rounds, emptying trash, wiping floors, and checking corners. Every time he passed a group of people, he noticed the stress etched on their faces, the small mistakes slipping by unnoticed. And every time he quietly corrected them, preventing potential problems without ever taking credit. As he finally began to head home, the janitor felt a mixture of exhaustion and quiet pride. He had done his work as he always did, without expectation of recognition. He knew that tomorrow would be a critical day. The AI launch was only hours away, and tension in the building would reach its peak. Small problems could turn into disasters if left unchecked, and he was determined to be ready. He paused at the door, looking back at the quiet office. He didn't see the engineers or the executives as heroes, and he didn't expect them to see him as one either. But he knew that sometimes being careful, being observant, and caring about things no one else notices could make all the difference, and he was ready to do just that. Tomorrow, when the launch began, the whole company would be focused on the big screens, the codes, and the announcements. But he knew deep down that it might be his eyes, his hands, and his quiet vigilance that would save the day. He pushed the door open, stepped into the night, and thought about the coming day, unaware that the challenges ahead would test him in ways he never imagined, and that his actions would soon change the course of the company's history forever. The next morning, the building was alive with urgency. The AI launch was hours away, and the tension was almost tangible. Engineers were crowded around screens, running final checks, adjusting codes, and debating tiny details that could make or break the system. Designers were nervously testing the user interface, trying to anticipate how the first clients would react. Executives moved from room to room, checking progress, making calls, and reminding everyone of the stakes. It was a high-pressure day, and everyone knew it. The janitor arrived early, as he always did. He pushed his cart quietly, moving through the hallways while most of the staff were still setting up. He had learned to navigate the building at this hour like a shadow, present but unnoticed. He started his usual rounds, checking corners, inspecting wires, and observing things that could be potential hazards. This morning, something felt different. He could sense the tension building, and there was an unusual hum from the server room that made him pause. He approached the servers cautiously, eyes scanning Evie. Airy detail. Something wasn't right. A faint smell of smoke lingered near one of the backup generators. The engineers, fully immersed in their digital world, hadn't noticed it yet. He knew immediately that if this generator failed during the launch, it could destroy critical systems. His heart beat faster, but he stayed calm. He had faced small emergencies before, and experience had taught him that panicking never helped. He moved closer to the generator, careful not to touch anything incorrectly. The heat was rising, and he could see a thin wisp of smoke curling from the side. This was no minor problem. If it was not addressed immediately, it could lead to sparks, a fire, or a complete system shutdown. He knew the AI launch depended on uninterrupted power, and this generator was a crucial backup. The thought of everything being ruined crossed his mind, but he pushed it aside. He had to act. Quickly, he found the switch that could cut power safely. With steady hands, he turned it off, preventing immediate danger. Then he grabbed a nearby fire extinguisher just in case and waited. Moments later, an engineer arrived, alarmed by the smell. "What's happening?" the engineer asked, voice shaking slightly. He calmly pointed to the generator. "It was overheating. I shut it down before it caused damage." The engineer looked at him, confused and slightly skeptical, but immediately called the senior tech team to verify. Within minutes, a small team rushed in, examining the generator. They confirmed what he had done. His quick thinking had prevented a potential disaster that could have delayed the launch by hours or even days. There was no dramatic applause, no cheering, just a quiet nod from one of the lead engineers. But that quiet nod carried respect, even if unspoken. The janitor smiled faintly, returned the extinguisher to its place, and continued his rounds. Even after this, he remained unnoticed by most of the staff. People were still focused on screens, codes, and last-minute presentations. They did not see the careful attention he gave to the hallways, the server racks, and the minor issues that could have turned into big problems. He moved from room to room, checking cables, securing loose wires, and making sure nothing could disrupt the delicate systems. Every step he took was deliberate, careful, and thoughtful. A few hours later, a minor electrical fault tripped a circuit in one of the main labs. Engineers scrambled, trying to find the source while worrying that this could indicate a bigger problem. The janitor noticed it immediately. He could see that a water leak from the ceiling had reached an outlet, causing the short. Without hesitation, he grabbed a cloth, mopped the water carefully, and checked the connections. Then he helped the engineers reroute power safely until repairs could be made. They barely had time to thank him, too busy with the looming launch, but he didn't mind. He understood that his role was not about recognition. It was about keeping the company safe and prepared. By mid-afternoon, tension had grown almost unbearable. The CEO walked the halls, checking on progress and reminding teams of the importance of the launch. Cameras had been set up in some rooms for a live feed to the board of directors. Every move, every adjustment, every calculation mattered. Amid all this pressure, the janitor continued his rounds. He saw things no one else did: a loose panel near a server, a cord stretched across a pathway, a spilled drink that could short a keyboard. Each time he acted quietly, preventing small problems from becoming big ones. The critical moment came just as the final tests were about to begin. A spark flew near the backup generator in the server room, tiny but enough to catch his attention. He rushed in, recognizing the danger immediately. The system was close to overheating again, and if it failed now, it could take down the main AI server just minutes before the launch. He acted without hesitation, cutting the power to the generator and making sure all sensitive equipment was protected. Engineers and technicians entered moments later, alerted by the alarm system. They saw what he had done and realized that a disaster had been narrowly avoided. For a few minutes, there was a quiet tension in the room. The engineers examined the generator and the server systems. They confirmed that the AI systems were intact and ready to continue. Some of them exchanged glances, whispering to one another, clearly impressed by the janitor's quick action. Yet he remained calm, brushing off their concern with a simple, "It's okay. Everything is fine now." He didn't want attention. He wanted the system safe and the launch to proceed without incident. After the generator incident, word began to spread quietly through the office. People whispered about the janitor who had noticed the smoke and acted quickly to save the servers. Some engineers, curious about how he had known exactly what to do, approached him, asking questions about the generator and the potential risk. He answered politely, explaining that he had learned by observing systems over the years and paying attention to small details. He didn't claim any special skill. He simply said that he cared about what could go wrong. Despite his modesty, people started seeing him differently that day. The invisible janitor, usually passed over in hallways and meetings, had become the quiet hero of the office. he didn't revel in it. He continued his work with the same diligence, checking floors, wiping surfaces, and scanning for any remaining hazards. But for the first time, some staff members looked at him with a new level of respect. They began to realize that heroism did not always wear a suit or carry a title. Sometimes it came quietly, in someone who paid attention when everyone else was too busy to notice. The final tests before the launch went smoothly, thanks in part to his vigilance. Engineers double-checked systems, but the small disasters that could have delayed the launch had already been prevented. He moved through the halls, making sure everything was clean, organized, and safe. By the end of the afternoon, the staff was exhausted but ready. The AI launch was now only a few hours away, and thanks to his careful attention, the systems were stable and reliable. As the evening approached, he paused in the server room one last time. He looked at the machines, the cords, the panels, and the monitors. Everything was in order. He felt a quiet satisfaction. No one would write an article about his actions. No one would call him a hero on social media. But in his mind, he had done what was right. He had protected months of work, millions of dollars, and the future of the company's most ambitious project. And that, he thought, was enough. He finished his rounds, pushed his cart toward the exit, and paused to glance back at the building. Lights glowed in the rooms where people worked tirelessly, unaware of the near disasters he had prevented. He smiled faintly, a mix of exhaustion and pride. Tomorrow would be the big day. The AI launch would finally happen, and all eyes would be on the screens, the engineers, and the CEO. But he knew that if something went wrong, it could very well come down to him once again. He left the building, the sun dipping low in the sky. The city outside was busy, people walking, cars rushing, life moving fast. He walked home slowly, thinking about the day, about the small actions that had made a big difference. He didn't need recognition or praise. He only wanted to be ready for the next challenge. The AI launch was only the beginning. Tomorrow, when the world watched the company unveil its revolutionary AI, no one would think about the man who had saved the servers, prevented fires, and stopped small mistakes from becoming disasters. But he would be there, quietly watching, ready to act if anything went wrong. And deep down he knew that sometimes, the greatest heroes are those who no one sees. The next morning, the office had a different energy. The tension from yesterday had transformed into quiet anticipation. The AI launch was just hours away, and the staff moved with careful focus. Engineers huddled over screens, reviewing every line of code. Designers tested interfaces and buttons repeatedly, ensuring there were no last-minute glitches. Executives paced the hallways, talking on phones, preparing speeches, and making sure every tiny detail was perfect. Amid all of this, the janitor moved through the building, quietly observing, checking, and correcting small issues before they could grow into bigger problems. Word of his actions during the previous day had begun to circulate quietly. A few engineers, impressed by his quick thinking with the generator and other minor issues, mentioned it to their colleagues. Some of the staff looked at him differently now. They had always known him as the quiet man who cleaned floors and emptied trash, always polite and diligent. But yesterday had shown them something else. He was more than just a janitor. He had an instinct for noticing problems before they became disasters. Some whispered about how unusual it was to see someone without a technical title take such decisive action. Despite the newfound attention, he continued his work in the same calm manner. He checked cables that were still loosely hanging near servers, adjusted chairs that were blocking pathways, and moved boxes that could have caused trips or accidents. Every action was subtle but purposeful. To most people, it might have looked like routine janitorial work. To him, it was a critical part of keeping the company safe and the AI launch on track. He had learned long ago that the smallest details often had the largest consequences. As the morning progressed, a senior engineer approached him. "Hey," the engineer said cautiously, "I just wanted to say, yesterday you really saved us. That generator could have caused serious problem." "Sss." The janitor shook his head, brushing off the compliment. "I just noticed it," he said simply. "I was doing my rounds." But inside he felt a quiet satisfaction. For the first time, someone had acknowledged his contribution in a way that mattered. It wasn't about praise, though he appreciated it. It was about being seen as more than just a background presence. Meanwhile, the CEO had arrived at the building. He moved quickly through the halls, checking on progress and talking to department heads. He had heard a few mentions of the janitor's actions from engineers and assistants. Curiosity got the better of him. He wanted to understand what had happened, and how a man with no technical title could prevent a disaster in such a high-stakes environment. He found the janitor in one of the hallways, pushing his cart and humming softly, unaware of the attention he was about to receive. "Can I speak with you for a moment?" the CEO asked, his tone polite but firm. The janitor looked up, slightly startled but calm. "Of course," he said, setting down his cart. The CEO motioned for him to walk to a quieter corner. "I heard that yesterday you prevented a major problem with the generator and other systems," the CEO began. "I want to understand exactly what happened and how you knew what to do." The janitor explained, humbly, that he had been observing the building for years, paying attention to small details, and learning about technology quietly on his own time. The CEO listened carefully, clearly impressed. He had expected a simple explanation, but found himself in front of someone with quiet intelligence, focus, and practical knowledge. The janitor spoke calmly without exaggeration, but every word reflected understanding and experience. He explained how he had noticed the smoke near the generator, how he acted quickly to prevent overheating, and how he had checked other areas for potential hazards before anyone else could see them. It was not a story of heroics in his eyes. It was simply what he did because he cared about the work and the people around him. After listening, the CEO paused, looking at him with a mixture of surprise and admiration. "I want to make sure you know how important this was," he said. "Most people wouldn't have noticed or acted in time. You potentially saved the entire AI launch, and that's no small thing. I need to think about how to properly acknowledge this." The janitor smiled faintly, shaking his head. "I don't need acknowledgement," he said. "I just wanted to make sure everything was safe." Word continued to spread quietly among the staff. More engineers came by to thank him, asking questions about his knowledge and how he had learned to act so decisively. Some joked about how he should have a title or an office. Others started to realize that maybe the company had overlooked talent in its own ranks. He remained humble, but the attention made him aware that he was no longer invisible. People were beginning to see him as someone who mattered, not just someone who cleaned up after them. As the hours passed, the tension of the launch grew. Screens displayed countdowns, progress reports, and simulations. The janitor moved through the building, making sure that small issues were addressed quietly and efficiently. He adjusted cables that were in danger of being tripped over, wiped up spills, and ensured that pathways were clear. Every action was deliberate, focused on preventing small disruptions from turning into major problems. He moved almost invisibly, but the impact of his work was felt by everyone who relied on the systems running smoothly. By mid-afternoon, the CEO called a quick meeting with department heads. "We need to make sure nothing goes wrong during this launch," he said. "The AI system is critical and every detail matters. I want every team double-checking their work." He glanced around the room and his eyes fell on the janitor, who was quietly observing from the doorway, and, the CEO added, "We also need to recognize people who go above and beyond even if their role isn't obvious at first glance." The room fell silent for a moment. The janitor's presence did not go unnoticed, and some people began to whisper, realizing the CEO might be talking about him. The janitor continued his rounds, aware of the subtle glances from staff and the occasional nod of approval, but he remained focused on the work at hand. He knew that recognition was not his goal. Keeping the system safe and the launch on track was what mattered. Still, a small part of him felt pride. After years of being overlooked, of working quietly in the background, people were beginning to see his value. Later in the afternoon, a small problem arose. One of the cooling systems in the main server room was showing unusual readings. Engineers rushed to investigate, but it was the janitor who noticed the cause first, a loose pipe that had shifted slightly, causing a minor leak. He acted quickly, alerting the engineers and helping them stabilize the system until repairs could be made. The engineers were impressed by his knowledge and calm demeanor. They realized that his actions had saved them from a potential delay that could have affected the launch. As the evening approached, the building hummed with energy. The AI launch was nearly ready and everyone was preparing for the final countdown. The janitor moved through the halls one last time, checking for any hazards or potential problems. He made sure pathways were clear, cords were secure, and equipment was safe. Every action was small but meaningful. Every detail mattered. He knew that even the smallest oversight could have disastrous consequences. The CEO, observing from a distance, noticed how the janitor moved quietly but purposefully. He saw the way engineers approached him for advice, the way staff looked at him with newfound respect. Something clicked in the CEO's mind. This was not just a janitor doing his job. This was someone who had a rare combination of awareness, intelligence, and care for the work and the people around him. The CEO realized that talent like this was invaluable, and that recognition and opportunity should not be limited to titles or degrees. Before leaving for the evening, the CEO made a decision. He would personally acknowledge the janitor's actions, not just privately but publicly. He wanted the company to understand that heroism and skill could come from unexpected places. He also wanted to ensure that the janitor had opportunities to grow, to learn, and to contribute in ways that matched his potential. It was a bold move, unprecedented in the company's history, but the CEO knew it was the right thing to do. Meanwhile, the janitor completed his final rounds. The building was organized, safe, and ready for the launch. He felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that he had done his part. Recognition had never been his goal, and he didn't need it to feel accomplished. Still, he noticed the subtle changes, the nods, the whispers, the occasional glance from staff, and he allowed himself a small, private smile. He was no longer invisible. As night fell, he left the building, the city lights flickering around him. He walked home slowly, reflecting on the day. The AI launch was tomorrow, and he knew it would be a critical moment for the company. He also knew that his work, his attention to detail, and his quiet vigilance had helped prevent disaster. And now, for the first time, he felt that his presence was recognized, that his actions mattered in ways beyond cleaning and maintenance. He didn't know exactly what the CEO planned, only that something had changed. People had begun to see him differently, and the weight of years spent being overlooked was lifting bit by bit. He felt a quiet hope that perhaps this recognition was not just for today, but for the future, a future where he could contribute more, learn more, and be seen for who he really was. And as he stepped into the cool night air, he thought about the challenges ahead. The AI launch would be the true test, and the building would be filled with tension, focus, and excitement. He would be there, quietly observing, ready to act if anything went wrong. But he also realized that tomorrow might bring more than just challenges. It could bring opportunity, respect, and a chance to finally step out of the shadows. The day of the AI launch arrived, and the office was buzzing with energy. There was a mixture of excitement and tension in the air, the kind of pressure that only comes when years of work and millions of dollars are on the line. Engineers checked screens for the last time, making sure every line of code was perfect. Designers tested interfaces repeatedly, clicking buttons over and over to make sure everything worked smoothly. Executives moved quickly from room to room, coordinating teams, answering phone calls, and making final adjustments to presentations. The atmosphere was intense, and everyone was focused on the screens and the countdown, unaware of the quiet presence that had been keeping everything safe for years. The janitor arrived early, pushing his cart as usual. He had slept poorly, thinking about the launch, the systems, and the tiny things that could go wrong. He moved through the building methodically, checking every corner, inspecting cables, and scanning the equipment for potential hazards. The office was alive, but he felt calm in the midst of chaos. His experience, his careful attention to detail, and his quiet vigilance had prepared him for this day. He knew that any small mistake could have consequences, and he was determined to prevent them. Engineers were busy running final simulations when suddenly, a minor error appeared on one of the main servers. A signal had been interrupted and the system displayed a warning. Panic flickered across some faces, but the janitor immediately noticed that the problem was simple. A loose connector had caused the interruption. He moved swiftly, carefully reconnecting the cable and stabilizing the system before anyone else could realize what had happened. The engineers looked at him in surprise, realizing that his quiet vigilance had saved them from a delay that could have disrupted the launch. Meanwhile, the CEO walked through the office, observing the activity and checking on the progress. He had been following reports about the janitor's contributions and was curious to see him in action. He noticed how staff members approached the janitor for advice and how the janitor moved quietly, taking small actions that prevented bigger problems. It became clear to the CEO that this was not just a janitor doing routine work. This was someone with awareness, intelligence, and the ability to act decisively under pressure. As the countdown for the launch approached, the CEO gathered his team for a quick meeting. "We're almost ready," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Everything is in place, but there is one person I want everyone to recognize today. Someone who has been quietly making sure this launch goes smoothly without anyone noticing." The staff looked around, confused. "Who are you talking about?" one engineer asked. The CEO pointed toward the janitor who was in the corner, pushing his cart and quietly checking cables. A hush fell over the room. The janitor froze for a moment, unsure if he had heard correctly. The CEO continued, his voice carrying across the office. "This man prevented a generator from failing yesterday, stabilized systems today, and fixed minor issues that could have caused major delays. He did all this quietly, without asking for recognition, without a title, and without expecting anything in return. Today, I want to make sure his contribution is known to everyone." Staff members looked at one another in surprise, whispering and nodding. Some had already noticed his careful attention to detail, but hearing it acknowledged publicly had a powerful effect. The janitor felt a mix of emotions: surprise, pride, and disbelief. He had spent years quietly doing his job, unnoticed by most of the company, and now the CEO was not only acknowledging him but celebrating his actions. He had never imagined that his work would be recognized in such a way. He looked around at the faces of his colleagues, many of whom were now smiling and nodding in appreciation. For the first time, he felt truly seen. The CEO didn't stop at praise. "I want to give him an opportunity to grow with the company," he announced. "Starting today, he will join the AI team as a systems assistant. He will have access to training, mentorship, and the chance to contribute directly to our projects. His knowledge, vigilance, and problem-solving skills are exactly what we need, and I want him to have the recognition and opportunity he deserves." The room erupted in quiet applause. Engineers and designers came over to shake his hand, congratulate him, and express admiration. The janitor, still stunned, accepted the congratulations with humility. He realized that this was more than a promotion or a title. It was a chance to step out of the shadows and fully use his talents. He had always been curious about technology, reading manuals, watching tutorials, and experimenting quietly during breaks. Now the company was giving him the chance to learn formally, to grow, and to be part of the team in a meaningful way. He felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The responsibility was great, but he knew he was ready. Throughout the launch preparations, he continued his rounds, but now with a new awareness. Engineers came to him for advice, and he found himself explaining small technical details, helping to troubleshoot minor problems, and ensuring that the systems ran smoothly. Staff members watched him differently now, respecting his knowledge and appreciating his input. It was a shift in culture that surprised even him. People were starting to see that valuable contributions can come from unexpected places, that titles and degrees do not define talent or intelligence. As the final countdown began, the office was filled with anticipation. The AI system was running smoothly, all systems were stable, and the teams were ready. The janitor stood quietly at the edge of the room, monitoring the servers and the environment, making sure that nothing would go wrong at the last minute. His heart raced slightly, but he remained calm, focused, and attentive. This was the culmination of his vigilance, his care, and his quiet dedication over the years. When the countdown reached 0, the launch began. Screens lit up with activity. Simulations ran flawlessly, and the AI system operated perfectly. Cheers erupted in the office, and the staff celebrated a successful launch. The CEO turned to the janitor, giving him a nod of respect and appreciation. The moment was overwhelming. For years he had worked quietly, unnoticed, doing his best to ensure the company's success. Today his work had been recognized, and it had made a real difference. After the launch, the CEO held a brief meeting with the AI team and the staff. "Today is not just about the launch," he said. "It is about recognizing talent, dedication, and vigilance wherever it exists. The janitor who saved us yesterday and today has proven that brilliance and heroism do not always come with a title. He has earned the opportunity to grow with the company, to be part of our team, and to contribute in ways we all can learn from." The room erupted in applause again. Colleagues approached him, offering congratulations, words of encouragement, and smiles of genuine respect. The janitor felt a mix of emotions. He was proud, humbled, and grateful. He had never expected recognition or praise, but the acknowledgement from the CEO and his colleagues made him feel seen in a way he never had before. For years, he had worked quietly, doing his job diligently and caring deeply about the company's success. Now the company was showing that it valued not just titles, but attention, care, and intelligence in action. Over the following days, his life at the company began to change. He was given access to training programs, invited to team meetings, and included in discussions about the AI system. Engineers and designers sought his input on minor technical details, and he found himself learning new skills rapidly. For someone who had always been curious and self-taught, this was an opportunity he had never imagined. The company had not just recognized him, it had invested in his growth, trusting him to become a vital part of the team. Despite the changes, he remained humble and grounded. He continued to perform his janitorial duties when needed, but now with a deeper sense of purpose. Every floor he cleaned, every cable he checked, every small hazard he corrected was done with the knowledge that he was part of something bigger, that his actions could influence outcomes in ways both visible and invisible. He had stepped into a new role, one that allowed him to combine his experience, curiosity, and attention to detail with formal training and support from the company. The culture of the office began to shift subtly. Colleagues who had previously overlooked him started paying attention to others who were quietly contributing in ways that might not be immediately obvious. There was a new awareness that talent could be found anywhere, that dedication and intelligence were not confined to titles or offices. The CEO's bold recognition had sparked a change in perspective that went beyond one individual. It began to influence the entire company. In quiet moments, he reflected on how far he had come. Years of working unnoticed, of learning on his own, of quietly ensuring the safety and smooth operation of the company's systems, had led to this moment. Recognition was not his goal, but he appreciated it deeply. More importantly, he had the chance to grow, to learn, and to contribute in ways that mattered. The future, once uncertain, was now filled with possibilities. By the end of the week, he was fully integrated into the AI team. He participated in meetings, contributed ideas, and assisted with troubleshooting minor issues. He worked alongside engineers who had once barely noticed him, and he found himself respected not just as a former janitor, but as a knowledgeable and reliable member of the team. His actions had changed perceptions not just about him, but about what it meant to recognize talent wherever it exists. The CEO occasionally checked in with him personally, offering guidance, mentorship, and encouragement. He made it clear that this was more than just a promotion. It was a statement about values, culture, and the importance of recognizing and nurturing hidden talent. For the janitor, it was validation, but also an opportunity to continue growing, learning, and making a difference in a larger, more visible way. By the end of Part 4, it was clear that the company had changed. The AI launch had succeeded, the systems were secure, and a new respect for hidden talent had taken root. The janitor, once invisible, had become a symbol of diligence, intelligence, and the power of quiet heroism. His life had changed, the company had grown stronger, and a new chapter had begun. A chapter that would continue to inspire employees and show that brilliance can come from anyone, anywhere. The weeks after the AI launch were busy, filled with new opportunities and challenges. The janitor, now officially part of the AI team, found himself learning faster than ever. For years, he had quietly observed systems, studied manuals, and experimented on his own time. Now, with a